Hello and welcome to the ongoing aspects of this recall day. Hope you've enjoyed it so far, and I hope that this is going to be useful for you as well. I'm bringing you two videos. This is the first one, and in the in-between time between the two videos, you may like to grab a cup of coffee and you may like to do the little exercise that I'm providing for you. So before we go any further, just check that you've got everything that you need in front of you. You may like to have the Gantt chart electronically in front of you. That's G-A-N-T-T. I'll obviously say more about that in this video in a minute or two, but that's the Gantt chart. It's an Excel document that should be there on Moodle. You may want to have the PowerPoint in front of you. So I will be sharing that on the video, but you may like to have a copy of that as well so that you can take notes or whatever as you go along. And the other document that you may well like to have is the timescale for the dissertation. You have that, it's Appendix 1 of the dissertation guide. You don't have the full guide, but you do have that one bit of it that gives you all of the dates along the way. So if you've got all that in front of you, we'll carry on, and if not, you may like to pause and just get that sorted. So here's a quotation from Churchill with his famous statue that has been in the news recently. He says in the context of the latter part of the Second World War, now this is not the end. It's not even the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning. That's the moment that you're at in this total course of PCP. Everything that you have done so far leads up to the dissertation, and now you are at the very beginnings of completing your dissertation. This is a very exciting part of the course. I hope you're looking forward to it, and I am sure that you will be successful in doing it. So let's go on and have a look at what the dissertation involves and see some pointers to help you along the way. I'd like to mention just briefly the learning outcomes. There are 4 learning outcomes, which is what you would expect, and they look like this. This is learning outcome number 1. From a range of methodological approaches, identify, select, and justify a method or range of methods and strategies that are appropriate to the chosen topic. In other words, you're going to have to decide how you are going to go about the research in your dissertation. What strategies and methods are you going to use in order to be able to come up with the results at the end of the day? And then there is learning outcome number 2, review and critically evaluate published work on the topic area. Identify and critically interpret information from appropriate sources, giving due consideration to issues relating to ethics. There's a number of points in this learning outcome, but one of the essential things that it says is, what do we know already? What is the existing knowledge on the topic that you have chosen so that you can now push at the boundaries of the knowledge and add something specific for yourself, for your ministry, and also useful to other people along the way. Then learning outcome 3, negotiate an appropriate topic for research, investigation, or inquiry within the context of pastoral care with psychology, theory, and practice. In other words, what is the topic that you're going to be looking at? What is the title of your dissertation? You'll be spending considerable amount of time on that to get that carefully honed into something that is entirely appropriate. So that's learning outcome number 3. And then tying the whole thing together in some way is learning outcome 4. Demonstrate conceptual, critical, and independent thinking through drawing relevant conclusions applied to practice. In other words, what is the destination in your dissertation? Where are you heading with all of this? That's something that you'll not know yet until you actually start to do your research and start to examine it. But what is going to be the outcome is going to be something that hopefully will be useful to you and your ministry. And as I've already said, to other people's ministry, and perhaps even useful to the movement, the Salvation Army at large. So these are exciting days, and what lies ahead is going to be something that is both achievable and useful and challenging along the way. You do have supervisors to help you, and as part of today or shortly, you will be spending time with your supervisor who will be doing exactly what it says here. This is taken from the dissertation guide and the write-up of the learning outcomes, so when you see it, you should be at least a little bit familiar with it. This is the job of the supervisor. They are there to guide and support you, to give advice, and to steer you away from disaster. The responsibility for all of that lies with you, but the supervisor is there to guide you and direct you, to warn you if you are going to fall into a particular pit and head towards a particular disaster. But you are going to be the one who is going to be in control of your own learning, your own research. So therefore it is up to you to listen to that advice and to do something about it. The supervisor's role is to nurture this process, not to proofread and to correct work. So in nurturing the process, we will do our utmost for that. We are available to you, so please make the very most of all of those resources available to you along the way. One specific thing that I want to speak to you about is time management. Now, some of you have got this really well sussed, and you work at an appropriate pacing throughout the course. But some of you still haven't really quite come to terms with this. So let me give you a very big heads up. There are many, many deadlines for the dissertation. Yes, you do have to submit a draft, and yes, you do have to submit the finished dissertation. But before you do that, there are a number of other deadlines that come along the way that you need to be able to follow. So either take that from the piece of paper that you have in front of you with all of those dates on it, or I'm going to introduce you to another way of looking at it. So if this is useful to you, then make the most of it. It's the idea of a Gantt chart. It's spelled G-A-N-T-T. And one of these charts will look a little bit like this. This has got nothing to do with your dissertation, but it just shows you what a Gantt chart looks like. So across the top, there is a time scale. In this case, the time scale goes from week 1 through to week 7. And each task is assigned a particular period of time in which it will be completed. So have a look at any point along the timeline and look down from that point, and you'll see what it is that should be happening at that moment in time, what may have already happened, and what will still have to happen in the future. So looking at week 5, you'll see that research, design, and layout should be concluded by this point. Developing and upload are current, and finishing is yet to happen. So if you know that you're in week 5 and that's exactly where you're at, then you are on schedule, and that's fine. If you start to lag behind or run ahead, it will start to become really obvious on the Gantt chart. Here's another Gantt chart. This one has a timescale that runs in days from the 21st of February through until the 5th of March. And you'll see that all of the tasks are given several days each in order for them to be concluded. So therefore, you can again take any point on the timescale. You can put a line down there and see what it is that has happened already or should have happened already, what is current on this particular day, and what is yet to happen in the future. And another example of a Gantt chart. This one is something to do with designing a house and laying the foundations right through to selecting the carpet and finishing off the work. Each task is given a timescale for it to be done. You'll see that the overall timescale is in months, and it runs for 10 months in total. Again, you can take any point along that timescale and see what should have happened and what is yet to happen. If you've had a big building project at your core or some other sizable project, you've probably already come across a Gantt chart and you'll be familiar with it. Now, out of the kindness of my heart, I have produced a Gantt chart for the dissertation. It is rather detailed, so be warned. It looks like this. Along the top row are all of the pertinent dates. They run from some dates that have already happened in March and May of this year, right through until the submission of your dissertation, which is due on the 26th of March next year, 2021. So let's have a look at this Gantt chart and see what it is that it tells us, because there's quite a lot of information in it. And if it is going to be useful to you, then you need to be familiar with it. The first thing to say to you is that the best way of putting this on paper, if you want it on paper, is to print it in colour on A3 paper. If you're able to do that for yourself and you want a copy, then go ahead and do that. If you want a copy and that's impossible for you, then you have two options. One is that you can print it in pieces and stick them all together. Or if you really do want a copy of it in A3 in colour, then simply send me an email and I'll make sure that you get a copy of it. Now, in order to understand it, let's look at one little bit of it, which is the top left-hand part. You'll see there that the activities are down the left-hand side and the timescale across the top. So let's take the first two activities. The first one, submit draft application for approval form. If you take that activity and go along to the red box and then read up, you'll see that on the 16th of March, that has already taken place. And similarly, you take the second activity, supervisors allocated, you go to the orange box, and you see that that took place in May this year. Then if you want to know what comes next, you can do it the other way around. You can go to the date, read down to the coloured box, and over to the left-hand side to see what the activity is. So today's recall day is the 24th of June 2020. And if you look down to the yellow box and the green box, you'll see there that it says Introduction to Writing a Full Application and Meet with Supervisor. They're the tasks for today. And as the whole thing progresses down the left-hand side, you'll see that it is very much a step-by-step process as you follow along the dates at the top. One word of warning is that where it comes to July, August, the activities according to the Gantt chart say identify literature relating to topic and identify literature relating to methodology. Those activities are not precise. If you look at Appendix 1 at the full document, you'll see that there's a little bit more to those activities than what's written here. But in order to keep the font size from becoming minuscule, I have abbreviated the tasks. These two tasks should also say that you need to read the literature that you identify. So please bear that in mind, that the Gantt chart sometimes has abbreviations of the activity. And if you look down to the two activities that are in red and follow those through up to the top, again, you'll find dates in red. The simple explanation for that is that I've switched these two around from what it says in the other document in order to ensure that this is entirely sequential. So that's the top left-hand part of the Gantt chart. But I also want you to pay attention to what is down the bottom right-hand side of the Gantt chart. Where it is circled in red, you've got a couple of key events to take place. You've got the submission of your draft dissertation, which is to take place in the middle of February. And then towards the end of February, when you get that back from your supervisor, you have the task of revising your whole dissertation before the actual submission that takes place on the 26th of March. Those dates are vitally important for you to note and to stick by them unless you have formal mitigation that says otherwise. So please take careful note of them, put them in your diary, and live with the consequences of that. Another little thing to note is that beyond the submission of the dissertation, there are two other tasks. And when you look for the dates for those, it just simply has question marks. When your research is concluded, you need to destroy all of the data and submit a form to Nikki that says exactly that. But that cannot happen until the award has actually been given to you. So once the degree is awarded and it's been confirmed with you, then we will ask for evidence that you have destroyed your research along the way. Please don't do that until you're reminded of that, and therefore you will start to know what those dates actually are, and you will follow along the guidance that has been given to you here. While we're looking at the Gantt chart, there are two very important things to remember. One is, please do not fall behind the timescale that's been given to you. If at any point you do, you will have to live with the consequences of that. So if you don't fulfill something by the end of July, August this year, you will start to impact what it is that you're able to achieve during the residential week in September. If you can't do what is down in the timetable for October, then it will slip into November and you will have a longer list of things to achieve during November. Please don't allow that to happen. Likewise, please do not run ahead of the timescale. There are a number of reasons for this, but one particular reason is that we want you to have time to reflect on your learning so far. Take time to think about what it is that you've been reading, what it is that you've been writing, the questions that you've been asking, the people who you've been meeting. Take time to reflect on it so that you make the most of the learning process for your own sake, but also for the sake of the quality of your dissertation. So please don't fall behind, but please also do not run ahead. And remember the whole principle of faith-based facilitation, where at the very heart of the process are those kairos experiences. So by giving yourself time to reflect, hopefully those kairos experiences will occur, and that will be to the benefit of your dissertation. So make the most of that along the way. In fact, one big piece of advice that I would give you personally is to make sure that you take time to have a few breaks along the way. Don't work so much on your dissertation that you don't have time to think. This is something which will hopefully be useful to your ministry and to other people's ministry. So to make the absolute most of that, you do want to have time to be able to think. So stop, have a coffee, have a tea, whatever it is that you would prefer to do, and just take a break. And I'm going to invite you to do exactly that now in a moment. And during the time that you're having a break, make sure that you give yourself enough time to watch the second video before we're back together again. And during the coffee break, you might like to do the exercise on using academic language. You can just simply follow on the PowerPoint and take the examples that have an X beside them and try to come up with a better example that ought to have a tick. And if you go on to the next slide, you'll find some idea of what the improved phrase or sentence should look like. At the beginning of the next video, I'll also just give you a quick heads up to the use of academic language. But for now, have a break, make the most of the break, and I'll see you in a few minutes' time.